Ryan here from E39 Source. Welcome back to the channel. A long overdue update on my 2000 E39 M5. Today is February 3rd, 2020, and that car is now 20 years old. That's right, 20 years to the day. If you use a VIN decoder, you can figure out what day your car was produced. Of course, you can determine the month simply by taking a look in the B-pillar, and on the VIN sticker we'll have the production month. So you can see 0200. That's February. So 20 years old, 2 decades. I have owned this car now almost half of its life. I got it in July of 2010. So this July will mark 10 years. I can't believe it. We'll have had this car 10 years. That's ridiculous. So I've kind of made myself a bit of a cheat sheet on my phone with everything that I've done since the last update. I did rewatch my last update, so I don't rehash too much of that. That was back in September of 2018, just about 20-30 days before I moved and brought the car here to Southern California. So a little bit of a background. We're at E39 Source LLC World Headquarters here in Escondido, California, just about 30 minutes north of downtown San Diego, maybe 40. And we've been dismantling some cars in here, and this guy's for sale. The video just went live on the channel probably yesterday or 2 days ago by the time you see this. So I spend most of my time up here, especially during the week. That's where the car is. I cleaned it up here yesterday on Sunday, and then it was going to rain last night, so I left it here and used the titanium car. But I'm going to move it around. We can't really see too much wedged in here in the lift. I'm going to move it over here, and I'll give you guys the update with everything I've done here in the past a little over a year. Okay, so we begin back in September 2018. I kind of knew that the move was impending and there were some things I wanted to get done in Ohio. So I proactively picked up a couple of things, starting with a dumb little thing I just wanted to have all ready for California, and that is this guy, the BMW sunshade. And it turns out that I use it all summer long inside the car, but I really don't need to use it in the winter at all. Well, we still have beautiful sunny days. A, the days are real short, and B, the sun strength just isn't there. Very low UV index. It doesn't heat up the car, and I'm not worried about a little bit of sun on the leather for a few hours during the day. So this guy pretty much just sits back here, but in the summer I absolutely do use this if I park the car for long periods of time somewhere in the sun. I probably could get away with taking it out in the winter, but I don't. I just put it under the cargo net back here and have it in here just in case. Up next, we're under the hood, and that's the DME box fan. I got a code in the DME for that. I don't like codes in the DME. I don't like things not working. So under that passenger cabin air filter box is the DME box that houses the ECU or the DME, and in the bottom of that box lives a small fan to keep those electronics cool. When the fan dies, you will see a code in the DME. I think it's 8F or 143 or the decimal and hex values. Don't quote me on it, but I had the code. I had the fan replaced. The code went away. I assume the fan works. So that was a good one. Moving on, another job that I guess I did actually in the cabin, but I probably could have here at the diagnostics port, and that would be a retune. So for years I have run the Shark 93 octane SII delete 7,000 RPM stock limiter, Euro throttle setting, non-sport mode memory. There's a couple other features there I'm probably leaving out, but I used that tune and loved it for years in Ohio. A negative about California is the idea that you cannot get 93 octane gas here outside of like 2 or 3 stations up in San Francisco, which is an 8-hour drive for me. So I needed to retune the car to Shark's 91 octane version of the same tune. Now that's not real easy, because when you flash this car, it takes the BMW software out and puts it on the Shark, and puts the Shark software in the car. So now you want to change it, so you have to put the Shark software back to the Shark and the factory software back to BMW, get the new tune, and then do it all again. So it took me quite a bit of time to get that worked out, but I did detune the car and probably sacrificed all of 2 to 4 horsepower and the different tune, but now we're 50 state ready with a 91 octane tune that I can take anywhere. 2 more things happened before this car made its way west, and one of those things, like a couple of days before I shipped it out, Joe and Kenan helped me in the garage rebuild the entire hood latch system. Why did I do that? Well, these hood latches here in the front core support, not only were they no longer pretty, I think this one over here was really rusty and dirty, and I'm pretty sure I did a DIY on this, but the hood was getting harder and harder to pull because these were rusty and not well lubricated, and you're supposed to be able to easily stick your finger in there and move the latch mechanism, fairly easily move the latch mechanism, but they were crusty. And then I had the issue in the car where the cable that attaches to the release handle was fraying and inevitably was going to break. So I decided, you know, I don't want to replace that cable again. Let's just do the entire damn thing. So that's what I did. We took a day and had to pull the bumper and the aux fan out and a bunch of stuff like that. But I did replace the whole thing. So both latches, there's a cable in between the latches. There's another cable that runs from this latch under the core support up to the junction box. And then finally the cable that runs from the junction box through the firewall by the brake booster down to the hood release handle. So after that and a little bit of calibration of the latches, I'm very pleased to report that the hood opened super smoothly and super easily. Finally, the last thing before shipping the car to San Diego was film. Now, I had replaced these headlights with Euro Hellas that are in really nice shape, and I replaced the bumper with a nice genuine BMW Euro spec bumper without the headlight washers and had that painted, and all that was nice, and the fog lights were done, and my mirrors had been replaced and repainted as well. And I know what California looks like from a driving standpoint. You go at least 80 miles an hour, a lot of miles every day, and what happens when you do that? You get a lot of stone chips. And I just didn't want to subject the car to that, and not driving it is not the solution. So I had some film installed, and that sort of stuff in Ohio is a lot cheaper. So I went with the Expel Ultimate, I think it's Expel Ultimate Plus. I had the entire bumper done, I had both headlights done, I had both fog lights done, I had the front end of both side mirrors done, and then finally I did the door handle, just this part of the handle that moves when you open it. Reason being, I've seen a lot of California cars where this fades out or the clear gets baked off of it, and mine were nice, and it was like 30 bucks to do all four of them. It was super cheap. So we've got nice film here. I love spray waxing or detailing the film, because no matter how dirty it is, it always feels like perfectly cleared or perfectly clean, you know, just clay barred clear coat. So there are a couple of visible lines from the film installer. It was a custom job, not a template job, so you can see a seam in the film right there. Same on the other side. And then a little bit down here in the lower part of the bumper. I don't know if you'll be able to see that or not. Unfortunately, you know, there's a couple of negatives with film as well. One being the seams or the edges can be exposed, and then those areas also attract dirt and dust that kind of hangs in there and gives a little bit of a line. But I'm not honestly very worried about that at all. There's like one or two little bubbles in the headlights. This stuff is self-healing, so in heat, sunlight, warm water, steam, small little chips or scratches will heal out, and then larger chips and scratches, I don't know how that happened. Those two little bugs, they aren't bugs, they're holes in the film, so obviously something hit that hard enough to damage the film. I don't know that it went through paint. If it did, it would be pretty minor. There's a couple of those around the car. All in all though, I've put more miles on this car in the past year and since the last update video than probably the 4 years combined before that. We'll get to mileage shortly, but this bumper would be in a lot worse shape if I didn't film it, so I've got to recommend the film. And then on one of the mirrors, it looks like the passenger side, this was within a couple of weeks of being here. A nice big rock came up on the highway and tagged it right there, like a millimeter before the film ends. And that one may have gone into some paint, but certainly would have been a lot worse without the film on there. So what I could do at some point is peel this off. Hopefully the paint under there is still good, and then just reapply. Next up was shipping the car here, and I kind of did a video about that last October or so after I was here. I think that went up in late October. I used Bears Transport. I worked with Liz over there. They're out of Illinois, and I couldn't have had a better experience in shipping this car here. It's something that I was worried about and kind of stressed out about for many months leading up to the shipping. You know, I hear all these horror stories of it didn't show up, it showed up late, it showed up damaged, they lost it, you know, just all this horrible information about car shipping. But my experience with Bears and working with Liz couldn't have been better. It arrived early in pristine condition. The guy was super helpful and communicative, so I would absolutely recommend Bears and Liz with Bears Transport. So now we're in San Diego. It's October 2018, and I decided to retint. If you guys remember the last update I did in Ohio, I think the final clips there were me talking about probably going to go with 3M crystalline tint at 50%. That's actually not what I did. So this is Lumar Formula One Stratos tint, which is a very high-end nano ceramic tint. It was not a cheap film, especially seeing that they had to remove the old film, which was a non ceramic tint from Lumar installed back in 2005 or 2007, I forget exactly when. And I ended up going a little bit darker than I thought I wanted to as well. The old film was right about at a 45%, I think it was, and this stuff is at 35%, so we're a little bit darker. Still absolutely able to see inside the car, and we're in a dark shop right now, so it's not the best representation of it, but I really like this film. You can leave the car out in the sun on a hot day, and you know, you get in the car and it's not 140 degrees. So superior heat rejection, 99% UV rejection. I like when the side windows front and rear match, so it's all 35%. Did all the side windows, and then the rear windshield. I did not do the sunroof, that's still privacy glass, and I did not yet do the windshield. Knowing that I'm going to be replacing that within the next year. I guarantee that'll be done by the next update video. And when I do the windshield, I will put a very clear film on that. I think they call it air. The objective of that film on the windshield is not at all to darken the glass. It is to reject UV light and heat. So that'll be done, and maybe I'll do the sunroof at that time, so it's really fully protected. And you know, thankfully, the previous owner of this car tinted it, and even in Ohio where there's not a lot of sun, it really saved the rear partial shelf from turning white. It's a little bit lighter than the headliner, but it is not bleached out like I've seen many of them, and the leather's still pretty soft for a car this age, and you know, the headrests aren't busted open or super hard. So tint goes a long way in protecting the interior, keeping you more comfortable, in addition to a little bit nicer look. Fall 2018, we came back under the hood, and you'll probably remember a video on it. I replaced this lower cabin air filter box. I did both cabin air filters, and I did the hood sensor. Reason being, I had a crack in this little piece of the bracket that came off to hold the hood sensor. I had some crumbling plastics in there, and I don't know how long these parts are going to be available, so I just wanted to get it done. So a nice little bit of service there. And then a very annoying DIY that I did last fall back in the garage at the house was the door actuator, the door lock actuator inside this door. And it's a really fiddly thing to do. I was able to get it done. But what was happening when you'd hit the lock button on the center console and the locks go up and down, this one was really slow and sluggish, sounded like it was working really hard, and sometimes it wouldn't fire at all, and you'd have to hit the button a couple times to get it to go. So what I didn't want to happen is the door to get stuck in double lock mode, which then means the door is stuck shut. You can't open it from the inside, you can't open it from the outside. Then you've got to remove the door panel with the door shut. That usually damages it. I didn't want to deal with that, so I just took it apart and replaced that actuator. Here's a weird one. So I'm driving the car last fall, and I think the shifter feels weird. It's like, what was that? It's moving around too much. So I grab on the shifter like this and pull up, and the entire shifter was moving about 2 inches up. So I'm thinking, like, it was, you know, it was really hard to get in gear, and I'm thinking, what the hell broke in the shifter linkage? I could still shift. All the linkage was okay, but I had a problem with the entire knob and the gear lever under the knob raising up and out of the shifter carrier. So I determined that to be the little plastic bearing cup, whatever you want to call it, that sits in the carrier that then has the ball pivot point of the shifter installed into that. And I had a broken tab on that. So kind of a pain to do with the drive shaft and the exhaust and everything still in the car. But Nate and I were able to replace that for just a couple dollars, and it doesn't lift up anymore. At 7:15 a.m. on December 22nd, 2018, on Coronado Island, just across the bay from downtown San Diego, we rolled over to 200,000 miles, and it was a momentous moment. I even pulled the car over to take a couple pictures and a quick video, and I'm probably putting those pictures over the video right now. In 2013, I made a bet with Colt. You guys remember him in the 01 black 540i 6-speed on the channel from many years ago. I made a bet with him. We each ended up replacing the batteries in our 5 Series within a couple of days or weeks from each other. He went with a generic AutoZone branded battery, and I coughed up the extra money and went to the dealer and bought the BMW one. And I'm happy to report that even though it's no longer in my car, that same BMW battery, is the white one, all the way in the back, still holds a charge and works beautifully. Now, why isn't it in the car anymore? Well, when we started dismantling here, I got a car that needed a battery, and I didn't want to go and buy a battery or try to find a used one or something like that for a parts car. So I took the one out of mine, which was 5 or 6 years old at the time, put it in that car and bought a new one for myself, which is the new BMW black one. But I do hook that one up to the charger about once a month, keep it going, and when somebody's here and needs a battery or a jump or whatever we need, that battery still fires. And if you're curious about the bet, I have no idea what the status of Colt's battery is, but I do believe that my battery over there outlived his entire car. In addition to a few stone chips in the clear film in the front end, I got to the shop one day and noticed that my driver's fog light appeared to have a big spider on it. I got down and looked at it, and sure enough, I had hit a rock or something, and it shattered the whole glass on the front of the fog light. The only thing holding it together was the clear film. And that's unfortunate because these fog lights were in nice shape and they're quite expensive new, but I bit the bullet. I bought another one, took it to a local shop here and had them film it with the same one. So don't tell anybody else, but if you look at night, the driver's one is a little bit clearer and a little bit brighter than the slightly older passenger side one. Next thing I had to do is dumb, and I've done it like 4 times. And that's this interior trunk lid light that has that little plastic tab that fits up in the carpeting. And anytime I mess with it, I don't remember, I was showing somebody the LED bulb that's in there maybe, and I popped it out. And of course I broke the tab off of it, so another $12 to replace that light again. So now we're in June of 2019 and we got new rubber fitted. The last time I put tires on, they were the Michelin Pilot Super Sports, kind of the last batch of those. And fast forward 12 or 15,000 miles a couple years since then. And now I've got the Michelin Pilot Sport 4S on there, which I love. They're pretty much the same as the Super Sports. I do think that they probably have better wet performance. I've only driven these in rain maybe once or twice, and it was very light rain. So I can't speak a ton for that. I did drive the Super Sports in a pretty heavy rain, and I was actually very impressed at the kind of traction and grip they gave me, both from an acceleration, handling, and braking standpoint. But of course, the stock wheels still, the stock tire size 245 40 ZR18 and 275 35 ZR18, just with PS4S now. And then I went ahead and had, of course, the tires balanced, and then a 4-wheel alignment after that. Next up, you guys already saw it. I'm willing to bet there's going to be some comments in here, and that is the M5 trunk mat. So we get a better view of it without the cargo net or the sunshade in there. A little bit of history. The original BMW ones that were available back when these cars were new, 2 decades ago, I think they were probably quite expensive and not many people bought them because there was virtually no used marketplace for them. They were just really difficult to come by. Everybody was in LA or no longer available, sold out. So I just gave up on it. I figured, maybe the E60 one would kind of fit, but not really. Well, we can thank Shadi of the E39 M5 Owners Group on Facebook. If you are an owner of these cars and are not in that Facebook group, make a Facebook, reactivate your Facebook, go to facebook.com and request to join that group. It's a fantastic community of very intelligent, experienced, enthusiastic, like-minded people, so you should definitely be there. But he actually put this together. This is not a genuine BMW product at all. It's something that he has replicated to nearly exact factory specifications. Look at the fitment in here. I mean, it is darn good. It's got the same border around the carpeting. It's a nice thick plush black carpeting with the M5 embroidered logo in there. The backing isn't exactly a BMW backing, but it's very good and high quality, and I think it was around $140 or something like that. Ignore the dark spot. I just had a bottle of Zano Z6 leak a little bit, so that's just some moisture, but it even goes over there and fits the little US cubby. There was a separate version for the Euro cubby, and then he even did a split fold and non-split fold version. So there were 4 different versions of this carpeting. Again, I don't know if they're still available, but I would have paid whatever you asked for this. The fitment and quality is fantastic. Well, we're talking about carpeting. I knew that I had the trunk mat on order from Shadi, and I wanted new carpeting inside as well. So I picked up the latest version of BMW's black floor mats, which already exhibit a little bit of wear where my heels sit there on the padded part. But this is a new version of the floor mat. I replace these things every 3 or 4 years, and this one's different. It's thinner, and I'll roll the seat back so we can get a look at the backing here. It's a totally different backing. It might be dirty under here, I apologize. See, the old ones had like a gray felt material that always delaminated and then shredded and came apart. They've replaced this. This is like what the F10 has. So it's the newer BMW. It's just a black, much more textured friction material that, the Velcro holds it in place. But even without that, it's a lot less likely to skid and slide around now. So the mats themselves are a little bit thinner. They're not as plush. To some, they might be a little bit lesser quality, but I do think they're going to last longer and ultimately hold up better. I'm going to try not to get too long-winded here, but my next project was retrofitting an LCM 3B, LCM's light control module. Why did I do that? Well, at the time, I had thought that the LCM 3B or later was required to operate the facelift taillights. Now, these are not stock US facelift taillights. These are part of the Hella retrofit kit, which was and is still available for $500 or $600, specifically designed for pre-2001 BMW E39s. And they come with 2 lights and 2 ballasts and mounting hardware for a standard 5 Series. Doesn't work on the M5, but whatever, you can put the ballast in there. So I retrofit the LCM 3B. That is not required for these taillights. Running them without ballasts, I should say. I wanted to run these taillights without ballasts, so I thought I needed an LCM 3B. I put the 3B in there out of a parts car. I deleted the ballasts and just went to straight adapter cables, and everything worked fine for about 4 or 6 weeks. And then one time outside the shop at night, I was locking up and I thought, why does the left tail light look dimmer? And I stood back and I was just like, no, I'm being crazy. My OCD's getting the best of me. I got in the car and I drove home. The next day I get up here, same thing, although now the left one's flickering. And I went up and kind of smacked it and played with it for a second, and then it went out, or 2 of the 4 LEDs went out, and I couldn't get it to come back on. Well, long story short, the Hella facelift retrofit kit lights run on 10 volts. Not 12. Everything else is 12 volts. If you give these things 12 volts, they're a little bit brighter, they look great, but then they fade out and then they die. LEDs are very sensitive to voltage. So the ballasts don't have anything to do with a different LCM or warning codes or incompatibilities. The ballasts are simple voltage regulators for the LED C-less lights that downstep the car's 12 volt output from the LCM down to 10 volts. So why the retrofit taillights need 10 volts and all the other ones need 12, I don't know. I was able to actually just yesterday confirm that a European spec 2003 car with the factory version of the Hella Euro lights also runs on 12 volts. So it's not just a Euro thing. I thought that was going to be the case since it doesn't have those 4 LEDs on the side that the US lights got, but no. So I fried my lights out. Yeah, I'm an idiot. Live and learn. Yes, I've amended the video on E39 Source and put a big comment on there. But right now, and it's messy because I haven't figured out a better way yet, but I am running the voltage regulator / ballasts still until I can figure out a way to, well, not, or just wire them and tuck them away somewhere a little bit cleaner. So ultimately, I got a fresh set of taillights out of it, which is nice because I actually had water enter my old rear left one. I had a bad gasket in there, so it had some water spots inside, and now we don't since they're new. Next up, we're back inside. I have taken the facelift in this car to the absolute extremes, and I have facelifted the HVAC panel. Yes, there's a facelift for the HVAC panel. What does that mean? Well, this is the HVAC panel, the climate control panel, and cars produced before 2001. See where it says Max AC there? That's a 2001, 2, and 3 thing. Back in 97, 8, 9, and 2000, that button said rest. Took me years to figure out what rest meant. What did that mean? Well, you had to comply with a couple of conditions for the feature to work. It had to be below, I think it was 60 degrees or 59 degrees outside. Which also meant your temp sensor had to work to report that. And your car had to be at operating temperature. And then with the key either off or in position 1, you could press that rest button and it would continue to circulate hot coolant through the heater core and turn the blower motor on and pump warm air into the cabin. The idea was if you were getting gas, if you were running into the store real quick to buy a bottle of Grey Goose, whatever you were doing, and you could come back to a warm car, or leave your passengers in the car for a few moments and keep them warm with the residual heat, that's what rest meant, residual, stored in the coolant. So that was a great idea. But then 2001 hit and other manufacturers were adding this trick mode to solve a problem on the opposite end of the scale. It is currently 62 degrees right now, and this car's cold, so rest function won't work. However, the Max AC function should work. So let me turn off auto lights there. Let's go back to position 2, and if I hit that Max AC button, you see it is an absolute shortcut to driving the fan speed all the way up, the temperature all the way down, the AC on, and the recirculating vent on. So on a hot summer's day, you've made it to the car. The E39 climate control is a little bit annoying in the way that ordinarily you would have to get in here, and if you didn't have that on, then you'd have to go click, 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 click all the way down to 60, and click, 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 click all the way down to 60, and it would just take forever and punch all the right buttons. So Max AC in the summer is super nice to just get cold air going. And then in the winter, it does still function, even though it's not labeled anymore, it does still function as the residual heat function. Essentially, it's a plug-and-play swap. You pop out the old panel, you put the new panel in, there's like 4 or 5 wiring connectors back there, plug everything in, and it does function as designed. You will notice, though, if you scan the car with Carly or INPA, PASoft, something like that, you will see in the HVAC or the AC module, which refers to this, there are now 2 air codes, and it'll be solar sensor left and solar sensor right. When BMW added this panel, they added an additional sensor to the car, and that is a solar sensor that on newer cars you'll find up here in the dash, in the front windshield vent. There's a little hole kind of right in the middle, and it's this little black dome that sits in there. And I suppose there's 2 solar sensors in there, left and right, or vice versa, and it takes data from how much sun or heat is coming in and kind of factors that in to the automatic mode on the climate control. So if it's sunnier, maybe it's a little bit more aggressive with the air conditioning. So without retrofitting that sensor as well, you have the code. Everything still works, but it throws a code for it. So I went back to a parts car, I pulled that sensor out. It's just 2 little wires that plug in, or 3 or 4 wires that plug into the back of one of the harnesses on this panel, and then it runs under the dash and goes up there. I depinned it from the car that I robbed the sensor from. I pinned it into my harness. It's just, take the red blue and put it in pin 6 and the black yellow and put it in pin 12. I'll put a screenshot of exactly where it goes if anybody's interested. But right now I have that sensor zip tied behind the dash, or behind the navigation display here. Reason being, I am not taking the entire dashboard out just so I can shove a little solar sensor up there that ultimately doesn't make a hill of beans worth of difference in the automatic mode. So eventually I probably will have the dashboard out, doing a blower motor, some other crazy dumb retrofit, and at that point I will finish the routing of the solar sensor to its proper location. But for now, no codes and everything works. Here's a fun one. So the bracket that the navigation display affixes to is screwed into the lower dashboard. Now I've got the Euro Dash in here. I've had it in here for a while. Absolutely love it. And unfortunately, no, I don't sell them anymore. My supplier moved on to Mercedes. So I had a customer ask me for the nav bracket for a 4x3 display, which were only included in those 2000 and earlier E39s. And the difference is it has these little spring tabs on the side, and that's what held the trim around the display, because this is just a piece of plastic, rectangular piece of plastic trim that just snaps on to the 16:9 display. The 4x3 display either had matching Titan trim or your wood, if you had a wood interior, that went around the display, and the individual rows of buttons that would have been, this third. So it required a different bracket. So I had a customer request that bracket. I didn't have it, and I was about to tell him, no, I don't have it. And then I thought, wait a minute, I do have it. It's in my car. See, they're compatible one way, but not the other way. You could put a 16:9 display in a 4x3 bracket, but you don't want to put a 4x3 display in a 16:9 bracket because now you won't be able to put the trim on. So I ended up removing my entire lower dashboard, taking out my 4x3 bracket, selling it to the customer, and then I just took from the parts bin here a 16:9 bracket and put that in there. So I have even facelifted the nav bracket in this damn car now. For the next job, we are back out here under the hood. So last fall, I'm not sure exactly when, maybe September, decided to go to Palm Springs for the weekend. Palm Springs is beautiful. It's about 100 miles from here. It's a really fun drive if you don't take the highways and go through Riverside up the 15. So I took this car myself. My dad went a day or two early. I decided to go the next day, take my own car, and my God, was it a blast going through the mountains, the Pines to Palms highway. It was surreal to have this car out there in the beautiful desert sun and the mountains. And it made it there, no problem. Drove hard for a little while. Temps were great. Got it to Palm Springs, parked it in the shade, enjoyed a couple of days by the pool, and then came home when Sunday night rolled around. And I followed my dad in the E60 M5, and I can't get too far behind that car, of course. So we're going up over the mountain, a couple thousand feet of elevation, kind of pushing the car a little bit. Everything was fine. I got home, parked the car, I went to bed. I'm on my way to the shop the next day. Ding, ding, check coolant level. And I think that's not good. When it says check coolant level, that means your expansion tank's almost empty. Sensor's way down at the bottom of the expansion tank. So I was about 2 miles from home, maybe 12 miles from the shop, and I thought, do I want to try to make it? Should I pull over? Should I get to a place where if I have to have it towed, I'm not on the side of a highway and it's a safer place to tow it? So I didn't want to run this engine with the risk of overheating. This engine's a rebuilt 2002 with not many miles on it still, so I decided to limp to a good place where I could have the car towed if need be. I pulled up test number 7 on the dash, kept an eye on the temp. It never went over 90 Celsius, which is okay, even though it's a 79-degree thermostat. I got to a parking lot, I shut the car off, I came out here and I started looking around, and there was a visible amount of coolant on this airbox, on the hose, on the frame rail down there, on the headlight. So I inspect the hose, and like the hose seems fine, the expansion tank is fine. It's got to be the radiator, right? Well, I had the radiator replaced back in 2011, 55,000 miles before it failed. But I determined it was safe to continue driving the car, so I drove it up here to the shop, got it on the lift, took the headlight and the airbox and stuff out, and was able to determine that right on the side of the radiator, these plastic tanks, there's a kind of a imprint in it where it says bare. And right there was a hairline fracture. So I figure that must have happened when pushing the car a little bit home over the mountains from Palm Springs. But thankfully it didn't leave me stranded at 10 p.m. out in the middle of the desert somewhere. It was off the 15, and I was able to order a new radiator and put it in a couple of days later. So fresh hardware. I didn't do the hoses. They're super expensive, and I did them last time. But did all the hardware and the mounting and the radiator itself. Of course, another bear, so probably get another 55,000 miles out of this one. Next up, we're going to talk about keys. So years ago back in Ohio, I could be up in my bedroom on the opposite side of the house through many, many, many walls, and I could hit the lock button on my key at night and hear the car lock in the garage if things were quiet. The key range was incredible. Opposite side of a parking lot, I couldn't even hear it, but I could see the lights flash knowing that it worked. And over the past couple of years, that range has gotten shorter and shorter and shorter, and I figured it was just the key batteries beginning to die. Well, the keys themselves, my 2 masters that I got with the car, kind of had some loose buttons, and the text on the back was all worn off. You couldn't read it anymore. The key was dirty, and you could tell that it was starting to round out. The teeth were getting smoother. So I just ordered a new master key from BMW here in Escondido, and then I never got the wallet key or the valet key with my car. These cars from the factory or from the original dealer should have come with 2 master keys, a wallet plastic black key, and then the gray plastic valet key. So I ordered the wallet key and the valet key and 1 new master. I didn't want to order 2 because I don't want to have 4, and they're just pretty expensive. So now with the new key, range is better, although it is not completely restored to how it was 5 years ago. And I'm trying to figure out why that is. Maybe the tint on the window compromised something in the back. Ultimately, the key receiving antenna is in the rear glass. I did replace the module. There's a module here behind the C-pillar Alcantara trim bolted to the chassis. It's a trap circuit, as it's called on real OEM, and I have a bunch of them from cars we've dismantled here. So I tried a couple of those, and maybe it's a placebo effect, but I do seem to have improved the key range by replacing that module and then a fresh new master key. Now we're back inside. Flashback a couple of months ago, I was on my way to the shop. It started to rain. Of course, I had just cleaned the car and didn't want it to get wet and dirty, so I'm kind of in a hurry trying to get up here and get the car in the shop. And in my hurry to do so, I have to stop out there and open a gate and then come around here and open the door and come in and roll up the door. It's actually quite a process. And I was holding the shop keys in my hands, and I jumped back in the car, and I have to do like a 3-point turn back here to drive in. And unfortunately, my key, still in my hand and in the hurry, put a nice gouge in the lower steering column, or the lower steering wheel trim, right above the M logo. And I kind of felt it happen, and I thought, I hope that comes out. That piece of trim's expensive, and it didn't come out, and I wanted it to. So I ended up buying a new piece of lower steering wheel trim and put that on there, so now that's nice again, but stupid expensive mistake. Next, we're going to talk about a few brackets. So I have access to these lifts now all the time, which is fantastic, and that's given me a lot of time to spend under the car, just cleaning up a couple of things that, you know, years ago leaked or had grease slinging around, and now I have the time and a way to clean that up. And while doing that, I noticed a couple of things. My rear wheel speed sensor brackets were both cracked and barely hanging on, so those things were super cheap still, like $6. So I'd replaced those. Not that it has anything to do with being under the car, but I also determined that my headlight brackets, somebody had over-tightened, and by somebody I probably mean myself, the lower 8mm bolts that hold the headlights in, I had over-tightened those and snapped off one of the body nut acceptors on the brackets. So I had an extra set of brackets laying around, so we've got fresh headlight brackets now. The last retrofit just went live a couple of weeks ago, and that is the auto headlight retrofit. So kind of one of the last things that this car needed to fully impersonate a 2001, 2, or 3 model year E39 M5 was the auto headlights. And I did that with the new switch bezel. The LCM 3B that I put in before helped enable that. Then I had to change the rain sensor to a rain light sensor and then fit a new prism, which, yes, still has some bubbles in there. It's not perfect. This windshield will be replaced. When I get the new windshield, it will have a new prism on there without any bubbles in it. But in the meantime, the feature works beautifully, and I don't have to play with the headlight switch anymore. It's fully automatic. Oil change. I think I've done 2 oil changes since the last update video. I like to go about 7,500 miles between changes. I have done a Blackstone engine oil analysis at every oil change since the rebuild. The first one was at about 1,000 or 1,200 miles. That was my break-in oil change. I went from 5W30 to 10W60 Castrol. That is the oil I live by and swear by and will continue to use. The Blackstones have come back very clean, which is great news after an engine rebuild, and that's the filter I use right there, the Male OX 152/1D. Those things are on Amazon. You get 2 for 12 or 14 bucks, and I absolutely recommend them. So that's about it, guys. We're going to get a look at the mileage. I think I was at 196 in the last update, so September 2018. Now we're at February 3rd, 2020, and we're just at 210,329. So a 200,000 mile car, now a 210,000 mile car. Putting the miles on, and you know, that's kind of one of the reasons that I rebuilt this engine, or had this engine rebuilt back in Ohio. I knew it was going to be cheaper to do there than here, just due to labor rates. Part pricing and availability was much more favorable then than it is now. And ultimately, I wanted to bring the car to California with fresh legs, not have to worry about it being unreliable or having to go down for long periods of time for rod bearings or chain guides. No, that stuff's done. I can drive this car 1,000 miles a week if I want to, take it to Denver and back, put miles on it, use it, and not worry about it from a mechanical standpoint, which has been really nice. And obviously, I have driven it just under 10,000 miles in the past year, which is my highest annual mileage since 2014, I think, when I got that 330. So everything's been great. You know, some minor little things like that stupid thing in there broke, and I'm messing with the taillights and burned them out, but the car in and of itself has been very reliable for me. I always end these update videos by talking a little bit about the future. One thing I already mentioned was the windshield. I will have that replaced sometime in the future. In the distant future, and this could be years away, I do want to do some fairly substantial body work to this car. You know, I had the hood repainted back in 2011, and the handful of stone chips I had a year ago is now 2 or 3 handfuls. It's not bad, but they're in there. Eventually, I'd like to have that repainted. This car has certainly had its fair share of rust after 14 Ohio winters. All 4 rocker points have been rebuilt. The one door seam has been rebuilt. Back here, both of these areas have been rebuilt, and they are not flawless. I've noticed a little bit of return. Can you even see? Like right there, there's the most faint kind of rust bubble that you'll ever see, and that's been static for about 2 years. It hasn't changed, and certainly here in California, the worst thing that ever happens to it is it condenses overnight. But little areas like that, I would love to be able to be in a place where I can take the time and, of course, financial resources to go around and just bulletproof that. Have that fixed, have the minor bubbles that are in here repaired as well. and bulletproofed. And then this car has had body work. It's had more substantial rust than that repaired before, and it's been resprayed from here down. The paint match is very good, but it is not perfect. So it'd be really cool to just be able to respray the whole car at once, fix any little dings, any little bubbles that are still there. I'm sure that behind some trim somewhere, under some carpeting, there's some rust I haven't even seen yet. But eventually, that'll be a project to kind of strip things down, and yes, it will stay Silverstone metallic. Now, I saved this for last because I think it is ultimately the coolest thing and my favorite thing that I've done since the last update on this car, and that is the Blue Bus. I did a dedicated video back in December about it. It's a product that has been delayed a little bit due to the Chinese New Year. If you guys ordered in that first batch and are expecting a shipment this month, it should happen this month. Late February is kind of the ETA for that. Just check Ted's website for updates there. And if you plan on ordering in the future, there will be another batch. Again, check the update. There might be a mailing list or something you can subscribe to, so you'll get a buzz when he is accepting more orders. But the Blue Bus, as I did a video on it, I think that was back in a kind of a pre-series unit. This right now is going between this car and friend's car, so I don't have it permanently installed. It's just sitting in there behind the CD changer and by the Sirius module. But this is the 3D printed case and the final revision of the circuit board inside. There's been a couple connectivity changes, and then this is the final version of the cable that will allow the microphone and hands-free calling to work as well. If you don't know what I'm talking about, please do go and watch the Blue Bus video and review that I did. I think it's very informative, and I'll certainly demo it better than I will here in this video. But there have been many software improvements and other improvements and other things I can talk about. If you guys want me to do a full video about the Blue Bus installation and setup and all of that, please leave a comment below. I'll be happy to do that so you guys are ready to go when you receive them in the mail. But essentially what I have here, starting at the bottom, that red, black, and white wire is the 3-pin data and iBus. Then this one, this is analog 6-pin DSP, and while it works fine, I find that the digital DSP sounds better. If you have the digital DSP, use it. If you don't, buy the cable. Just plug it into the top of the amp. All the amps are ready for it. You just got to plug it in, put this thing in digital mode, and you're ready to go, and it's going to sound awesome. So I just have the other one, the analog, plugged in as well, just so the wire's not floating around. And then the yellow-black one is the adapter cable that's going to go to the blue connector, which is the TCU, so you'll have microphone and phone support inside the car. So I'll give you a quick little show in here of what things look like now. He's kind of reworked the settings menu. It's just as seamless as ever. I listen to podcasts, I listen to music. I use this thing every single day, every single time I'm in this car. And honestly, I hate driving this car without it. So I just had to pause it, which is why there's a cut in the video there. It auto plays. I was listening to an NBA podcast on my way to the shop today, even in the other car, and I've put it in here and it just seamlessly reconnects. It's now making use of the LEDs on the 16:9 display to show either red for no Bluetooth connection or green for a successful Bluetooth connection. We can see the pause there. I can use the button on the steering wheel to play.
And the Bucks just really don't. I think
we get the metadata on the screen there like that. And this is called the dashboard. I can invoke the main menu here, go into settings, and now it's just kind of broken up between audio, comfort, calling, and UI. And it's just all here. It's really snappy. There's a way to change your DSP right there between analog and digital. It's super cool. And then my favorite thing about the Blue Bus are the one-touch comfort turn signals. I don't have to hold it anymore, and it goes 5 times. And there's a setting for that. In fact, I believe it's in comfort. And before, we could go between 1, 3, and 5. Those were the 3 options. 1 just being stock, how the car used to be. Now we can stop anywhere between 1 and 8. So if you really take forever to change lanes, you can go up to 8. There's your normal mode in 1, but I just keep that on 5. So the Blue Bus is absolutely a must-have for this car, and he's not paying me to tell you that. I am that excited about the product. It totally revolutionizes the driving and ownership experience of these cars. That's going to do it, guys. Thanks for watching this update. I know I probably went way too long in showing all the nitty-gritty details, but essentially what I do is just watch the one from last time, open the spreadsheet, see what I've done since the last video, and just go through it with you. So that is the February 2020 20-year update video on this car. Plan on continuing to use it as I do right now as a daily driver for the short-term / foreseeable future. Eventually, I do plan on getting a daily driver, something to just absorb the miles and the wear and the tear more than this car. But right now, as a fresh California resident, it is just way too fun driving this thing around. So stay tuned to the channel. Lots more to come. I'll talk to you in the next E39 Source video. Take care.